Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. My name is Alan Noel. I own a restoration business, been in business for like 30 years here, and I just moved to a new shop. And speaking of shops, how many of you guys here have shops? All right. How many of you guys know where everything is in your shop? How many of you guys are lying? Huh? Yeah, that's right. You're all lying. Okay. I just moved from a 1,700 square foot shop that I was in for 27 years. And the reason I was there so long is because I owned the place. But anyway, I had an opportunity to move, and so now I have a 12,000 square foot facility. And I just, now wait a minute, if you came to my shop, you would say, where did all this stuff come from? And I would say from a 1,700 square foot shop. So you know how things grow and grow and grow. The walls start closing in on you because you got this cabinet, then you have this and you have that, then all of a sudden 1,700 becomes 500 square feet of walking space. Anyway, so now I'm struggling with heating the place because heat is not cheap, and finishing has to be done in the ambient temperature should be above 55 degrees. Anyway,
you own this one now, or do you rent this one?
I rent this one. Yeah, I wish I owned it. I would subdivide it. Anyway, I want to talk about this right here just for a second, okay? Because I'm in a group of restorers nationwide called Group, G-R-O-O-P. Maybe you all have heard of that. And it's all professionals, and we have everybody from Don Williams from the Smithsonian to chemical manufacturers and just people such as myself that own businesses. And we ask each other questions about finishing and the results of, and therefore all that kind of stuff. On something like this, if you have trouble keeping it together, you starve the joint of glue if you clamp it too tight. Okay. Also, you have dissimilar woods. Okay, so the absorption rate of glue is going to be different for every piece of wood. And also, you have wood movement. Every piece of wood is going to move at a different rate. So something that's built like this, theoretically, because of the different species of wood and the way it's glued together, probably won't stay together very long. Now, what I mean by very long, in woodworkers' terms, that could be 25 years, 50 years. Some of y'all guys build things that's going to be together for 1,000 years, obviously. How many of you guys build Rolls Royces? It takes you 6 months to build a chest of drawers. Or how many of y'all have taken that long to build something? Oh yeah, you've taken lots of time. You put a ton of time into something and you make it beautiful and perfect. And then you paint it with a paintbrush. Right? So you build a Rolls Royce and you paint it with a paintbrush. Getting back to this thing right here. Now, this is something that's been hotly debated on the internet with my group here. Mineral oil as a finish for a cutting board is food for bacteria. Okay? So I don't care what finish you put on a cutting board, as soon as you cut something on it with a knife, then that knife's going to go through that finish and deposit whatever material you're cutting down into the wood. So whatever that is, bacteria starts growing in the crevice that the knife created, plus it starts eating the mineral oil as food too. Okay? So the only way that you can have a viable cutting surface is to have raw wood and wipe it with bleach. So when you look at real cutting boards, they're always made out of the same type of wood, all in grain, and you'll wipe them with bleach, and that's all you do to them, because bleach kills the bacteria. This is way too pretty to be cutting on. Way too pretty to be cutting. But the main problem you'd have something like this would be starving the joint of glue. Okay? And mainly because of the different absorption rates of the glue, like the maple might take it a whole lot less than cherry, and it does, because the denser the wood, the less the penetration you're going to get from the glue. Okay?
Thank you. Question. End grain, I certainly understand. If you use side grain, is it going to just eventually have nicks cut out of it, or why can't you use side grain, or why is it not?
Well, side grain just won't hold up as long as end grain will, because end grain is much, much harder.
End grain heals like a wound. That's why they make butcher blocks out of it. Yeah, because it closes up again. Yeah.
Well, butcher blocks. When you see a real butcher block, it's put together with it's like let's just say one that's 100 years old. The only glue they had back then was hide glue. right? Water-soluble glue. So if you made it long grain and you wipe that with water and bleach like they always do, then that high glue is going to liquefy and come apart. So real chopping blocks are put together with high glue ingrained up, and they're bolted together too to keep them together. So the only surface that you're wiping is the ingrate. That will suck in moisture, am I right? It sucks in the bleach too. Okay? So that means that you've got a sterile surface to cut on every time you wipe it with the bleach because the ingrain takes it in. It also eliminates the grease. Helps to eliminate the grease from fatty things that you cut or whatever. Does that make logical sense to everybody? Yeah, end grain is the way to go. It's, long grain, when you do it side grain like that, it's not going to stay. It's not going to be glued together very long, and you're going to cut it up real fast just because it's side grain.
Will you repeat what you said about not using mineral oil?
Well, mineral oil is food for bacteria. Okay, so as soon as you slice into your cutting board, your knife is taking the material that you're cutting and forcing it down into the wood. Okay, and it's also slicing right through any finish that you put on there. So that's just more food for bacteria. So if you put a nice finish on a cutting board or put mineral oil on the cutting board, after you cut something on it, you're going to wash it, aren't you? So what's the sense of putting mineral oil on it? All that is bad. That's just food for bacteria. So all you want to put on a cutting board is nothing but bleach and water. And you bleach it after you use it, and you bleach it before you use it, and wipe it with clear water. You got to get rid of the bacteria. So putting a finish on a cutting board is futile because you're going to cut right through it, and that's just more something else for bacteria to eat.
So Roy, the best, since it's getting wet all the time, I guess Titebond 3 would be the best for these?
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, real cutting boards are bolted together. You've seen, they're really, it's a massive thing, and they're built that way, so they'll last for, years and years and years, and you're cutting on end grain,
The argument that I read on the internet for the mineral oil, because like you said, if you research the internet 3 hours later, you still can't figure out how to finish it, was everybody else says, oh, you definitely want to use vegetable oil on a cutting board the same as you do in a salad bowl, and everybody else said, stop. Vegetable oil turns to rancid.
It's food for bacteria.
That's the reason why mineral oil is. There was no reason for the oil itself to turn rancid. However, I do agree, if you remove the oil,
that's one of that's the conclusions we came up with because it just doesn't make sense that you put a finish on a chopping block because you're going to be chopping on it.
Correct.
Making sense. Wine and cheese, perfect.
So if it's going to last, ought to be an inch thick with two bolts on either side going through.
If it's going to last, you ought to make it 6 or 8 inches. I would make a chopping block no less than a foot.
It was only a wedding gift. They weren't even relatives.
Hospitality instructions with each one.
Oh, I truly have.
All right, well, let's talk about that. Okay, as far as finishing materials go for things that come in contact with food, okay? First of all, there's no such thing as a toxic finish. Okay, every finish that you get off the shelf here is edible. Once it dries, you can eat it. So you can take a spoon of Verathane out there and just let it get really hard, and you can use it for candy. You can just sit there and eat it. It will not hurt you. Because if they put materials on the shelves that would hurt you after it's dry, then you talk about lawsuit city, right? So there's liability things here. So when you buy any finishing materials off the shelf, once they have dried, the chemical, if it's varnish, that means that the mineral spirits just dried out of it and it's cross-linked. If it's shellac, the alcohol's gone. If it's lacquer, the lacquer thinner's gone. And all you have left is nitrocellulose or shellac or oil molecules. All those things are fully ingestible. Babies chew on cribs. They eat white paint all the time, whatever. So the best thing for salad bowls and things like that, but already answering your question, if it's going to come in contact with food, a finish on anything that comes in contact with food, it's just not a good thing because it gives bacteria something to eat.
To follow that up, and why was there such a huge push for a little while there to get all the woodworkers out of making toys?
Because of out of making toys?
Out of making toys or anything for kids.
But finish on it.
How long ago was that?
So it's only a year and a half, something like that. Yeah,
Well, the only thing that I remember remotely close to what you're talking about there is the toys coming from China. that had lead in the paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's from China. That's not
That's
America.
out of business. I mean,
Right.
They didn't even want us to make anything for our own kids.
Well, that's ridiculous. You just think about the liability end of living in America, and you know that when you buy something off the shelf, when it dries, it's non-toxic. Because if it was toxic, you wouldn't buy it.
If you're worried about finishing toys, put shellac on it, because every pill, just about every pill you take has a coat of shellac.
Coat of shellac on it. And you eat shellac all the time. And the best way to mix up your own shellac is to use grain alcohol. So when you finish your project, you drink it. That's you recycling, you finish.
I got a question.
All right.
When you say alcohol and shellac, what kind of mixture would you use, half and half?
To mix up shellac?
Yeah.
Well, the formulas for shellac would be 1 pound of shellac and a gallon of alcohol, and that'll make a 1 pound cut. Now, when I say 1 pound, that's a pound of shellac.
A lot of shellac.
It's a lot of shellac. The best way to mix shellac, real simply, is you're going to make small quantities of it. Just take a quart jar, put about a quarter of shellac flakes in there, and cover with alcohol twice again. And if you want to make a thinner mixture, you add more alcohol. If you want a thicker mixture, then you use less alcohol. It's just that simple. You will, just after you make it once or twice, you'll go, well, this is the consistency that I like, so I made it like this, and it's that simple. Alcohol and shellac go together. I mean, it's so simple, okay?
So it's best to buy it already.
Mixed up? No. Flakes. You make your own. When you buy something in a can, you don't know how fresh it is. Also, they put additives in it that isn't in flake shellac to keep the shelf life longer in it. Okay, so the finish doesn't dry quite as hard. Okay, but when you mix your own shellac, you know that you have a completely pure product there that will dry good and hard. And the way you know that your shellac is going bad is it doesn't dry hard. It won't dry. That's that simple. If your shellac doesn't dry, then it's old. Okay, nothing you can do will make it dry.
That's just denatured alcohol?
Denatured alcohol, yeah.
About how long does it last if you mix it yourself?
It depends on how you've made it, how you store it, okay? Like if you take I use jelly jars and just fill it all the way up to the top and breathe on it and put the top on it, so I got as much oxygen now as possible. And something like that you can use 6 months, 8 months, something like that. We mix up real thin mixtures like half-pound cuts for touch-ups and things like that, and I've kept them in bottles for years and they still dry. The thicker the mixture, the less alcohol you use, I think the faster it goes bad. The thinner the material is, the longer it lasts.
If you're spraying, spray shellac, do you use a thinner cut?
What I do if I'm going to spray shellac is I go buy seal coat. Zinsser seal coat shellac. It's a sealer coat. It's already mixed up. It's excellent product.
What's it called?
Seal coat.
It's de-wax shellac.
De-wax shellac seal coat. It's just called seal coat. Made by Zinsser.
Speaking of that, I bought a can of Zinsser, but it wasn't a seal coat. It was the regular.
Orange shellac?
Well, it's clear.
Okay.
And put it on the surface, and then I read the can after the fact, duh, and it says don't put any other finish on top of this. It's not recommended.
Uh-huh.
Why is that? Has it got wax in it?
Yeah. Now, if it's not de-waxed, then you can put shellac over top. Very simply, what they're saying to you is this: use our products, don't use anything else. Okay. Now, I have used shellacs off the shelf, out of cans for years and years and years. De-wax shellac that has a little bit of shellac wax in it. If you want to get rid of the wax, you just filter it through cheesecloth. It's not rocket science, but here's the thing. It's about marketing, okay?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, they don't want you to use any other product over top of that because you'll be buying something else. They want you to buy their
In
product.
particular, it says don't put polyurethane over this.
Uh-huh.
Use our seal coat instead. So I pick up a can of seal coat and I look at it, and the first thing I notice is the thinner they recommend is denatured alcohol. I go, well, this has to be shellac.
That's exactly right.
What's the difference between the seal coat and the regular can?
Marketing. Marketing.
Is de-waxed, the regular is not.
Yeah. No, one is de-waxed and the other's not. And if you use nothing but shellac, I don't care what it is, you can just slop it on top of each other because it chemically bonds to the previous
I
coat.
want to put a reactive finish on that now, like polyurethane. Is it going to stick?
It's always better to use de-waxed shellac for your undercoats, always.
Yeah,
Unless you're going to use shellac top coats.
Question is, how do I recover from that? Can I just simply,
Wash it off with stripper, yeah, you can wash it off.
alcohol?
Yes, you can just.
You just put regular de-wax shellac on the top of the wax shellac, that'll work too.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you can seal it back up with, yeah. You're still going to have a little bit of bleed through the shellac. I think it would be minimal. Besides, if you're putting an oil finish over top of anything, what do you have to do to the substrate?
Sand it.
You got to sand it. So you're looking at a mechanical bond anyway, right?
I have sanded it.
You got to have a mechanical bond.
You just mentioned stripper. In reference to, say you've got an old piece of furniture. I've got my grandmother's old sewing machine.
Right.
And the finish on it is just, it's got this black stuff on it. It's hard, it's crusty. I don't know what that finish is, but I'd like to take that off of it. Now, I do know that it's got a lamination on the top of it. So how do you deal with something like that?
How old is the piece, you think?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood, maybe 90 to 100 years old.
Okay. Anything pre-World War II has got a shellac finish on it. Excuse me. It'll have a nitrocellulose lacquer finish on it, and when you get to about 1920, pre-1920, it's all shellac. Okay, so you can just look at it this way: between World War I and up to modern times, up to present time, lacquer finishes are used. Before that, it was shellac finishes. Okay, so any finish. Well, very simply, everybody knows what homoformes refinisher is. Okay, to make homoformes refinisher, just take denatured alcohol and lacquer thinner and mix them together. There it is. It's real cheap to make it that way, you know. And you can just take that and it'll just wash the finish right off. Speaking of stripping, here's how you can tell whether if you have a lacquer, shellac, or oil-based finish on the wood. Okay? When you put the stripper on the wood, if the finish melts, then you know it's alcohol, you know it's shellac or lacquer. If the finish wrinkles up, then you know it's varnish, it's oil-based. Okay? Because in strippers, it has lacquer thinner and alcohol in it. Well, actually, lacquer thinner has alcohol in it. And it has methylene chloride. If it's a shellac finish, then the lacquer thinner will melt it. If it's a lacquer finish, then the lacquer thinner will melt it. If it's a varnish finish, then the methylene chloride creates enough heat to make it wrinkle up and let loose, and then it comes off in sheets. So that's how strippers work. They work off of either melting the finish itself because it's shellac or lacquer, or it's heating the finish up enough to make it let go of the wood when it's a varnish. Methylene chloride does that. So basically all strippers are is methylene chloride and lacquer thinner. And if you want to use a refinisher, alcohol and lacquer thinner, mix them together.
He was talking about that piece being veneered as old as it is, if they have problems with glue.
High glue, high glue will not react to alcohol. As a matter of fact, alcohol will make high glue get hard again because it sucks the water out of it. So no strippers on the market will attack glue lines at all. Now, if you put it in a live bath, that's a whole different story. I never recommend live baths. So it's really that straightforward. Strippers never, ever, ever monkey with glue joints. You don't have to worry about that. And if it's turned black and oxidized and all that, it's just shellac finish. I'm sure it is. It'll just now if you really knew how to French polish, you wouldn't have to take the finish off. You could French polish it back out. I teach that class.
Yes.
Is this kind of open question section?
Sure, ask me anything.
I invented wood turn, and due to the nature of the colors of the wood we use, they're all open grain. So I found Crystal-Lac grain filler, which is water-based. I don't feel that many people use grain fillers, but it really makes a difference in
Gargantuan difference
of the work.
Yeah.
And I just came from a symposium, Ken Vickery and I, probably the best woodworkers in the country. And I took a picture of every instant gallery item there, as Ken did. And when you look at the angles, you can see the open grain. I mean, nobody addressed, these are the best people in the country, and none of them addressed grain filling.
Okay, I'm a
So
good,
at I kind of led into, just for my own, I said, does anybody do anything about the grain? Oh, they just fill it in with lacquer. Well, that's impossible. We all know that. Well, I do anyway. But,
it is possible, but you use 10 times more material to do
Yeah,
it.
you
So
wanna-
that's why they make grain
yeah,
fillers.
drum and
Right.
sand it all out.
Exactly,
Fill it in.
exactly.
Yes. But do you like the Crystalac product? Have you used it?
I don't use.
Over it?
Well, I don't use Crystalac pore filler, but we do. Well, what he's talking. Does everybody know what he's talking about? Filling the pores of wood. Okay. There's wood filler. Then now there's putty, but there's wood filler. Now, if you have a real coarse grain like a coarse mahogany or a coarse walnut, and you put a layer of finish on it, you can see the grain pattern just screaming at you. Okay. Now, your finest finishes are grain-filled finishes, to where you have a beautiful smooth surface, and that helps to really to make the grain pattern dramatically better too, because it makes it more predominant. If you put a finish on, well, here again, what you're saying is when you went to the show, the finest woodworkers, you saw these things that were beautifully built, but the finish on it left you lacking, right?
It looked like Green Canyon.
Okay, so in other words, they built a Rolls Royce and they painted it with a paintbrush. There you have it, right there. So, and when you do that, then when somebody looks at your project that doesn't know anything about what you're doing, they're just looking at it like looking at a beautiful box, all they see is the surface. They don't see the hours and hours and hours it took you to build anything. They don't see the hours that you put into finishing it. They just know what they're looking at is like, it's that, and that's all they see. Whereas when we look at something, we're looking at the joinery, we're looking at the wood selection, we're looking at, the design, and also we're looking at the finish. And very simply, the better finisher you are, the better projects you could make. Especially if you make mistakes, because if you make a mistake when you build something, sometimes you have to turn around and say, well, I got to start over. But if you're a good finisher, you can take a piece of poplar and make it look just like cherry. Or you can take a piece of mahogany and make it look just like black walnut. Or you can make it look like sassafras, if you know what you're doing, So finishing is like, y'all may have ever heard the old adage that builders aren't finishers and finishers aren't builders. You ever heard that? Well, that's very true, because we rarely build anything in my shop. I have all this. I have machinery. I got everything, but I rarely build anything. We only use that to make parts for the things that we're working on. Basically, once in a while I'll build a plywood box or something for somebody. But when you walk into a cabinet shop, what you see is 99% cabinet machinery and that type of thing. But the finishing area is usually very, very small. And that's just the way it's always been for some reason. Cabinet shops build cabinets and finishing shops finish. Anyways, you had something.
Yes, you're a restorer or whatever. Tell me about the antique things and so forth. Do you refinish any of those? Because I've heard that you lose a lot of the value when you do things to a piece of antique.
Yeah, the old Antique Roadshow. Where's its ugly head? Okay. An easy way to explain the way we approach what we do would be the Civil War. Okay? The Civil War would be the timeline when the Industrial Revolution really got going real well. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, you had mass production. Okay? So the quality of furniture went down dramatically after the Civil War. Now, that's not to say that compared to what you can buy today that it isn't good furniture. It is great furniture. But point being is that pre-Civil War, pre-Industrial Revolution, we still had machinery, water belts and water wheels and all this kind of stuff, high-speed machinery making things. But basically everything was put together on a bench. You still had somebody cutting dovetails. You still had somebody scraping it smooth. You still had somebody putting the finish on it and all this kind of, the inlayers, the carvers, okay? And when the Industrial Revolution happened, then that eliminated a lot of hand work on pieces of furniture. So in our opinion, things that were built before the Industrial Revolution are far more valuable than what was built after the Industrial Revolution. There's always exceptions to that. If y'all are familiar with East Lake furniture, that's a period of about 1880, 1890, something like that. Now, some absolutely extraordinary furniture was built during that period, but it's very rare. It was pretty much for select people. The run-of-the-mill machine-made stuff is it's all generic looking to my eyes. To somebody that's not in my business, they look at, oh, that's a beautiful antique, but to us, it's just a generic little East Lake table or something. But pre-Industrial Revolution, when we're dealing with furniture like that, the last thing that we want to do is take that finish off of that piece of furniture. We want to revitalize or refurbish the finish the best we can and add to it when we need to, but never take away from it. So you retain the value of the piece, and what the Antique Roadshow has done is they've made people think that their grandmother's 1940s dining room table is an antique and it's worth a lot of money if you refinish it. But that's just not true. If something is from the 1850s on back, then you have something there that you can debate as far as the value goes. But what really drives the value of antiques is rarity and provenance. How rare is the piece and who made it, who owned it, whatever. That's why you see, like on the Antique Roadshow, this was carved by Hepplewhite himself, and it's got the furry paws and all this, right? So, you can tell that we can tell distinctly that it was made by so-and-so, made out of this type of wood, and it was made when it was made and all this kind of stuff. So, because it was made by a famous maker that has a great reputation, and it's still intact in its original condition, and it's also extremely rare because you can only make so much stuff in your lifetime, so to speak, then that makes that piece extremely valuable when it comes to American furniture. Okay.
Well, don't you think that some of those pieces that he may have designed and was built in his shop was built by apprentices and people?
I would say 99% of it was.
Worked under him. So, he actually put his hand on all those Hepplewhite pieces is kind of unlikely. Very
unlikely. He probably put his hand on the money. I agree, yeah, and you're exactly right. Yeah, it was just like, are y'all familiar with Andre Boule, the man that started all the brass and tortoiseshell inlays and all this beautiful marble inlays in France? Now, he designed and built extraordinary furniture, but I'd venture to say that his hands never touched 99% of it. Just designed it. It's like me. I run a business and all this, and I would say 90% of the stuff that goes through my shop, my hands don't touch it. So
you're there to look after it and supervise it.
It has to look and it has to be what I want it to be before it walks out the door. That's exactly right. I did some work for her back there in the back. What was your name? Ann. And so I'm quite frankly, I didn't do it. I'm sorry. Did I do it? Did I do the work?
Well, we were just trying to fix the finish.
But did I do it?
Yeah.
I did. But you got lucky.
What's the oldest piece you've ever restored?
Well, we just had a pair of Spanish mirrors in the shop that were probably the 1650s. No, we've had things in there. I did a commercial for Zurich Insurance. They used my shop as a location, and they had me rubbing on this old chest, and that was dated 1705. I don't know. I guess I have actually worked on things in the 16th century. But, of course, those are extremely rare, A lot of times this stuff that's been handed down, I guess really the oldest things I've ever worked on are religious icons, gold leafing, regilding, and repairing surfaces like that. There just isn't that much really old furniture out there being refinished or restored anymore because, the business that I have now doesn't remotely compare to what my business was like 15 years ago because of us baby boomers getting into houses and buying antiques, and the antique craze was just phenomenal from about 1980 to 2002, something like that. And then us baby boomers, our kids are grown up and they're gone, now we've got to downsize and you have another flood of furniture on the market that our kids don't want. So that means that the restoration business has fallen off considerably, For me it has, anyway. And I've been in business a long time and never advertised. I mean, I'm still doing okay, but it's nothing like it was.
My question is, you have the polyurethane, lacquer, shellac. So, which one of those, your business, do you prefer to use?
We never use polyurethane because polyurethane is a floor finish. Floor finish.
Okay.
We use, traditionally, if, like I said, if it was built after 1920, then we know we can test it, no, it's a nitrocellulose finish. That's what we would use on it. If it was if it was a true antique, then we would use. We always use the appropriate finish for the piece that's appropriate for the piece and the time period and all that. Unless they want me to take a beautiful chip carved, bed and paint it black. I got past not wanting to do things for customers a long time ago. You don't want to paint that chest of drawers. That's beautiful. Okay, I'll take it to somebody else. Yeah, so, it's not mine. But we always do things where we can reverse it if we have to. Anyway, it's some people can be very fickle in this business.
I'd have to close my eyes first.
Oh yes, so many things.
But, yeah, getting back to polyurethane, I'm making a tabletop that's going into a restaurant, and it's going to be subject to spills, potentially even alcohol.
Just say children.
Wouldn't polyurethane be the best?
Absolutely. Oh, okay. You're making a project. What's it going to be? If it's going to be a table, an end table, how's it going to be used? Then if you want something that's extremely durable, see, polyurethane, you just hear polyurethane, blah, blah, blah. All polyurethane is varnish. It's just oil-based varnish, good old varnish, like McCloskey's varnish, Park's varnish. It's just varnish. You might add a few drops of polyurethane so they can put polyurethane on the can. So it's polyurethane, but the bottom line is that it's still a varnish resin. It's still the same product. Okay, so if I was going to build something for a restaurant, I would, you can slap on polyurethane. That's fine, or you can just use regular varnish, and the product will perform just as well as polyurethane, just because of what's on the can. Now here's another way that they market things to unsuspecting customers. You have polyurethane. Let's start with that. Okay, you got a can of polyurethane right here. Okay, you know that is a finish, right? Does everybody know what wipe-on polyurethane is? Okay. Okay, so you take this can and you add 25% mineral spirits to it. That makes it wipe-on polyurethane. You take that can and add 50% mineral spirits to it. It makes it a penetrating oil finish like Danish Watco. Still the same resin, everything's still the same. It's just a thinner material. You add 25% more thinner to it, so it's 25% varnish and 75% thinner. You have wash coat. Okay? That product is all of these products, but you can see all these products in different cans. So how much mineral spirits do you want to buy? You can take one can of varnish and pour it off in the lures and screw them tight, and that will really help elongate the life of the varnish, because as soon as you open the can, the oil starts cross-linking. Just like the old paint cans, you open them up, you see a crust, you see a hard crust. That's where the varnish is cross-linked and got really hard inside the can from the oxygen in there. Once that starts, it doesn't stop. Once your varnish starts drying, you can't stop it, okay? And like, for instance, I know everybody here has seen a nice old oil painting that's 100 years old or whatever. When you're looking at a painting that's that old, that's done with linseed oil varnishes, mixed with pigment, there's their paints. When you're looking at that, what you're looking at is dirt, because the varnish that held the pigments together is long gone. And so old paintings are always over-varnished to keep it on the canvas. So what you're looking at is dirt. You're not looking at a varnish anymore, you're looking at dirt. And that's why paintings flake off of canvases. They turn to dust, because the varnish keeps on cross-linking until it turns back to just dirt, or whatever.
Could you build up from varnish to spar varnish to polyurethane? Spar varnish is waterproof, I believe.
Spar varnish is a varnish that has more plasticizers added to it. That means that it doesn't get as hard as regular varnish or regular polyurethane. It's in other words, it stays soft enough to where it's still malleable. Okay, a hard spar varnish finish, you can take your finger and push hard. You can dig into it. Okay? Yeah, and it's designed that way so, like for instance, if you put it on a boat, that boat's going to expand dramatically and contract, so that varnish has to be able to move back and forth, right? All right, now, that's the great thing you brought, because I was going to talk about this. One of the things that you have to understand about finishing is this. On this table right here, the grain's going in this direction right here, okay, like this. So we know that wood expands like this and contracts, right? So when you put a finish on top of a table or whatever, that finish has to expand and contract with the wood, right? Okay. So they add plasticizers to finishing material so it'll stay supple enough to where it'll expand with the table in summertime and contract in the wintertime, hot and cold. But plasticizers dissipate. Plasticizers are the same thing that you smell in a new car. You're smelling the plastics in the car off gas. That's that new car smell, okay? So you know when that goes away in your car, either you smoke cigars or the plasticizers have migrated out of the plastics, and the plastics are getting harder and harder and harder, okay? And that's just, they start cracking. So the same thing happens to finishes. The plasticizers dissipate over a period of time, and the finish gets harder and harder, okay? So when the wood moves, the finish says, well, I'm too hard to move now, I've got a crack. So that's what happens to finishes over a period of time. Who had the old Chester drawers? You? I'm sure
I had the sewing machine.
Okay. Was the finish all crazed and cracked and all? Okay. You see, that's where that finish has gotten so hard that when the wood moves back and forth, it starts to crater. Okay? And that's what we call alligatoring. All right? Now, let's say you've built a dining room table and you've wood filled it. There it is. You put wood filler in it. You have put a beautiful polished finish on it. It looks like a piece of glass. And maybe you've all done that type of finishing where it looks just like a polished piece of glass. Now, it's beautiful to look at and all that, but the reality is that after about 6 or 8 months, that polished finish is going to start cracking microscopically, okay? Now, when that happens, the more cracks, the duller the finish. Just like a good analogy would be to look at an old car in a junkyard. An old car in a junkyard starts to get hazy looking and all that shine goes away, right? But if you took a rubbing compound and went back to that car and you rubbed a rubbing compound, that shine would come back, wouldn't it? Okay. That's because the paint on the car does the same thing as the finish on a tabletop. Over a period of time, it starts to crack. Okay? Now, on a car, we used to compound our cars and put paste wax on them. That compounding cut away the haze, and then you would rub paste wax on it, and the paste wax would get into those little crevices that you can't see and cause the water to stop right there. The water would just beat up and roll off your car. The reason you waxed your car was to fill up those little tiny crevices that are microscopic so moisture can get through and rust your car. Does that make sense to everybody? Finishes on wood do the same thing. So if your finish is starting, okay, like if you have a polished dining room table, after about 20 years, it's real dull, okay? It doesn't give you that mirror reflection. You can go in and wet sand it and polish it right back. It looks just like glass again. So what happens is over a period of time, the finishes become like mountain ranges because of the cracks in the finish. And to restore the luster, you have to sand the mountain range down flat again. Because if you take a piece of marble, for instance, and cut it in half, you got a rock, right? But everybody has seen polished marble. If you make it flat enough, it gives you a mirror reflection, right? So that reflective just comes from flatness. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So when you have these ridges in the finish, the more ridges you have, the less reflective it becomes, the more satiny it looks, right? And that's why they put sand or ground glass into finishing materials to make them look satin. When it dries, that stuff flows to the top and diffuses the light so the finish doesn't look clear. It looks satiny. Whenever you see a satin finish on a piece of furniture, that's a cheap piece of furniture because they're hiding something.
When they do pianos and that, they really shine and really pop out, particularly on pianos, I guess. You see them and they're black and they're real, I mean... Yeah,
but what you're looking at there is polyester. That's a polyester finish. That's something completely different. And that's something I don't deal with. I mean, you can imagine how hard it would be to get the luster back on something that hasn't ever been polished. See, polyester finishes aren't polished. They're off the gun in an environment to where they can do it dust-free. Okay? Sometimes they'll do them upside down and let gravity completely level it out. Polyester finishes are just Previous to polyester finishes, everything was done in lacquers. Previous to lacquers, all pianos were done in shellacs, and they were all polished to mirror finishes, right?
Well, the Crystalac has a waterborne lacquer that they call piano finish. Is that what you're speaking?
No,
Okay.
that's just piano finish on the can.
All right.
Polyester is the piano finish.
Can you talk a little bit about the catalyzed finishes that the commercial shops use?
Sure,
these days?
sure. I'll be glad. First, let me get back to the cracking finish here. I was going to make a point about that. Does everybody have oil polish in your house? Lemon oil?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think for a minute they've taken lemons and squeezed the oil out of it? Do you think for a minute that's true? Of course not. So what you have there, basically, if you took out the lemon scent and the mineral spirits that's in the bottle, you have mineral oil, which is a great laxative. You can just drink it. Okay? That's what mineral oil is. So, there's no such thing as liquid furniture polishes. Absolutely no such thing. And the reason being is that those little cracks on that finish makes the finish look dull. Okay? So if you put oil on it, that wetness makes it look shiny again, doesn't it? Okay? But the oil dries, doesn't it? Okay. It also seeps into those little crevices that you can't see. So, has anybody ever put oil on a piece of furniture and looked at it 10 minutes later and you see spots starting to spot up and all that? Everybody seen that? That's the oil soaking into the finish. Repeated oilings of a finish like that, the oil will soak in far enough to where it'll dry and be trapped by the finish itself. And the finish will start looking milky. And when that happens, you have oil completely trapped in the finish in a vapor state. So you wipe more oil on it. All of a sudden it becomes clear again because it's wet. But as soon as it dries, it becomes even more cloudy. Okay? Repeated applications of that, the oil will migrate because it takes a long time for mineral oil to dry, right? And that's all it is mineral oil. It'll migrate all the way to the wood, and what is that wood going to do with that moisture? It'll suck it right back in because it wants moisture back. It's been dried to 7%. It wants that moisture back. So when that oil touches it, it just sucks it right in. So you keep on putting oil on there, that wood keeps on sucking it in and expanding at the same time. Sooner or later you can just take your fingernail and just scrape your finish right off because it has nothing to hold on to anymore because the wood is expanded so much below it. I know you've all seen flaking finishes. Flaking finishes come from moisture absorption. So, if you've got all these cracks in your finish, what do you do? What do you do to a car?
You repaint it.
No, you wax it. So you put wax in there. And the best wax you can possibly use on furniture is shoe polish. Good old kiwi. Use some good old kiwi, rub it in there and polish it out just like you're polishing your shoes. You can put a spit shine on it, and and you can pour water on it, and the water will just beat up and roll off your furniture, right? There's no such thing as furniture polish. It's furniture wax. Wax is the key. Wax clogs up the little microscopic cracks, right? If you want to make a dull finish look good again, you've got to wet sand it smooth and polish it back out. Because the dullness comes from the peaks and the valleys in the finish from the movement.
The sanding, is it straight grain or you random orbit or there's any?
Well, when you're doing fine sanding on a top coat finish, the sanding paper is so fine that the scratches are so minor that a buffer will just make them disappear. Swirl mark remover is all we ever use to polish a finish because we sand it with, we get up to about 1200, that's as far as we go.
Starting with.
When you're sanding finishes, your beginning coat should be no less than 320. Anything less than that, you start scratching the finish too deep. I will take 320 and kind of rub it together just to wear it out a little bit. Then sand the sealers. We only sand sealers with 320, okay? Only sealers. And we only sand top coats with 800 and above because the scratching is too deep with rougher grit papers. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, if you're doing polyurethane, you do oil-based finishes, then you can sand with 320 between every coat because the oil has enough solids to where it'll fill in those little scratches that you put in there, and also gives you a better tooth.
If you're going to do either a table people eat on and get water on and stuff like that, or a coffee table where beverages are on and spilled, do you use varnish or do you use polyurethane?
What's the difference between polyurethane and varnish?
I don't know.
There isn't.
Oh, okay.
It's just the way it's just the way it's the way to charge you more money for a product that doesn't perform any better than the regular old varnish that we're used to using.
Oh, okay.
There's no difference. See, oil is oil is oil. Does oil and water mix? No. So if you put a regular varnish finish on a tabletop, is water going to penetrate that finish? Absolutely not. If you put polyurethane on there, and that's an oil finish, is water going to affect that? Which one's cheaper, varnish or polyurethane? Same thing. It's marketing.
Would varnish be good on exterior?
Absolutely. That's what it's designed for.
Can I ask you this? This is a Intarsia that I put on the outside, and the surface is beginning to chip off a little bit. I think all I put on there was lacquer.
Is this outside?
That's outside.
And you got lacquer on it?
I think that's what I put on it.
Okay, if you put lacquer on it.
It's coming off.
It's coming off. And the reason it's coming off is because of expansion. Moisture gets in those cracks and makes the wood swell to the point where the lacquer can't hold on anymore. So that's why it's doing that.
Should I sand that off, or can I take that off with something else?
You can chemically take it off with lacquer thinner.
Lacquer thinner?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, now, what would you recommend that I put back on that? Somebody recommended back and then put spar varnish.
Is this outside?
Yeah.
Nothing but spar varnish.
Spar varnish.
Nothing but spar varnish.
Good.
Nothing but spar varnish is going to last outside, okay? That's what it's designed for. It's designed for boats. Exterior oil-based finishes, spar varnish with pigment added to it.
Yeah, but boat people do it every year.
Now there is a product that I know that's you might have to order on the internet. I don't know who keeps it, but there's a product called Boat Coat. Okay, Boat Coat is the best product I've ever seen for exterior uses, like doors and things like that. Now, one thing you have to understand about living in the South is that we have really, really hot summers and it's really, really humid. So that means anything that's been varnished and it's outside, boy, it's going to really expand in the summertime, isn't it? From the heat and humidity and all that stuff, right? So you can't expect a varnished door that gets direct sunlight every day, especially the afternoon sun. That door should be serviced every 6 months because that finish is cracked to death from movement. And moisture.
Another coat on it? Or?
Yeah, you can sand it down, put another coat on it. And whenever you see the finish failing from the top or the bottom first, then what did the person do that finished the door? Or what didn't he do? He didn't seal the top and the bottom, and that's where we see the damage always is at the top and the bottom because they do it with the door hanging. You can't do that.
If you got a watermark on your table, it's white or something, how can you remove that? So
All right.
you put mayonnaise in it, which is probably oil, I suppose.
It's oil, isn't it? Okay, so it's Vaseline, isn't it? Okay. You may have read the Highland Woodworking blog I wrote, because that's what I was talking about. Very simply, when you have a white ring, you know that is from moisture, correct? Remember the cracks in the finish, okay? So when you put a glass down on a tabletop and that white ring happens within just a couple of minutes, then you know that finish microscopically has billions of cracks in it, and that moisture from gravity is being pulled down into the finish, right? So you take the glass away and there's the white ring. That white ring is just like the cloud in the sky. That's moisture that has evaporated and been trapped by the finish, okay? So when you see a white ring in the finish, the moisture itself is in the finish itself. It's not in the wood. Now when you see a black ring on a tabletop, then the moisture has migrated to the wood and reacted with the wood and caused a black ring, just like a rusty nail in a piece of wood causes it to oxidize black. Okay? So you can't fix black rings and finishes because that's in the wood itself. You've got to take the finish off to get to that, right? White rings, on the other hand, a little bit of mayonnaise, let it go for 24 hours and wipe it off. That usually will soften the finish enough to where it'll disappear. Now, in my shop, if it's a polished finish that's been buffed, we just take a buffer. It's gone because of the heat. We create a lot of heat. It just makes it release because we're making the finish expand from heat, right? Sometimes you can take a hairdryer about 12 inches away and gently heat it up on low, and that'll make the finish expand to the point where the cloud just disappears. Mayonnaise sometimes works over 24 hours. Vaseline petroleum jelly would be the second thing you would try. And the third thing you would try would be a hairdryer. Because, you know, every time you get to a different step, you can do more damage to the finish, you know. And if you get to the hairdryer part and it doesn't work, then you call me. And I'll fix it. Yeah, you first.
Story, please, on Howard's Scratch Restore. Kind of
Very simply.
Yellow can.
Very simply, is it liquid? Is it liquid?
Sure.
Okay, all Howard's Restore finishes is extremely thin wax. You can buy Kiwi shoe polish, which costs $2, And it's excellent. It's the best wax you can possibly buy, because if y'all all have done, I mean, military guys, you spit shine your shoes, right? So you know that shoe wax gets so hard that it'll glaze over to a super hard finish and give you a mirror shine, right? Only the best waxes do that. And so shoe polish is the very best wax you can buy. It's creamy, comes in colors, easy to use. Shines great. Great protection. It's easier to force it into the little cracks you can't see when you're putting it on. You know how to use it. Shoe polish is the key.
So why not just use shoe polish as your finish?
You can. Yeah, it says right on the can, great for a wood finish. It says right on the can.
Real durable.
But the thing about a wax finish is if you mess it up, what do?
Just wax over.
You wax it. There you go. You pick.
Well, you could take your different colored shoe polishes and mix them together to make different colored wax.
Absolutely. You can mix and match.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was that in the past when I had bought varnish and I buy a gallon of varnish and only use a quart of it, and that's 3 quarts left over, I don't ever leave it in the can.
That's what I'm saying. You pour it off into jars and you tighten up the jars.
But what I do with it is I pour it off in jars and then I take some saran wrap, comes off a roll about 11, 12 inch, fold it, lay it on top of the jar where all the air has gone out from under it, and then put the lid on. That does two things. That gets the air off at the top of the varnish, and it also keeps the lid from sticking, so you can screw it.
That's a great idea. That's a good tip. That's a real good tip.
The saran wrap?
The saran wrap, that's a real good tip. I'd never heard of that.
Lay it right down on the top of the finish.
Yeah,
Just lay it
that's a real good tip. Because even though you've poured it off in the jars and all that, you know it's starting to cross-link, and you got to use that varnish. Like if you're going to buy a gallon of varnish, you'd be ready to varnish a boat and use the whole thing at one time. The trick is buying your finishes in the amounts that you can use at one time. Because let's say you have that, you've got your quarts poured off and they sit there for 6 months. I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it. I don't think it'll dry hard.
What about that stuff you spray in a can?
Oxygen, that's what I'm saying. I blow into them to try to get the, I'm too cheap to buy oxygen, for God's sakes.
Al, the problem with that is you're still blowing almost pure air on it.
Well, here again, we use materials up.
Atmosphere is 16% oxygen. By the time it comes back out of your lungs, it's 14% oxygen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
It's still primarily sealed.
It's still primarily sealed.
Could you use argon gas?
I have no idea. You can use that for neon lights, I think. I have no idea.
Well, I use it for welding, and that's the reason I'm saying, could you just, of course.
If one gas replaces oxygen, I guess you could. You could put anything in there, couldn't you?
It's about as neutral as you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all.
Yeah. I mean, I've done it before, and it seems to work, so.
What about sanding sealers prior to putting any finish on it?
Well, he was going to ask a question right behind you before you.
2 questions.
Okay.
What's the mixture of alcohol to lacquer thinner that you use for your
Refinisher?
refinisher?
Put them together.
Okay, I'm cheap. I use third and 2/3. Does that still work?
Sure. Does it take the finish off?
No?
It doesn't take the finish off.
Yeah, it does.
There you go. It works.
Second question. I've heard people say about using CA polish on turn, in other words, the CA.
CA glue?
Glue. What is that going to last a long time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Cyanoacrylic glues are great for certain things. We use them for spot repairs and things like that. It polishes well. It does a lot of things really good. I would suggest that you don't use that because it's much easier just to use shellac. If you put some 1 pound cut of shellac on a pad and push it on your project, it'll sit there and just, you'll have a beautiful finish instantly. If you do it on your lathe, your high-speed lathe, you can just polish it right there and you're done. Or you can take wax it and you're done. Anything that'll varnish, you can do it on your lathe and do it real fast.
What's the big thing about beeswax?
Price.
I mean, beeswax is not from bees or from bees, or what is it?
I believe bees do produce wax. I think it has to do with marketing. Because I believe canaba waxes is what we really want to use on, Beeswax, I think those are for like, it's extremely soft. It's extremely soft.
So it's soft.
Yeah. It's very soft.
It never hardens.
Never hardens.
Beeswax never hardens.
2 questions. when you're walking around the house and you scratch your furniture, I'm saying these sticks and stuff like that.
Almond
to
sticks.
use and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any other ideas other than that? Because to me, it leaves a streak in the wood anyhow.
Oh, it does, yeah. Well, the nicer the finish, the more the defects show up. When you scratch a nice tabletop, you scratch, it breaks your heart, and there's nothing I can tell you, like, to get the result that you would want. You can't do it in your house. We can do it in the shop. You can't do it in your house. But what we generally do, here we're going back to waxes. We use these wax sticks that are colored to match furniture colors. And they're also, you have soft sticks and you have hard sticks. You have the type of sticks you have to melt because the wax is so hard. And a lot of times what we'll do is, because wax will burnish to a beautiful polish, right? If you got a little dent or a little scratch or something, we'll fill it in with wax and then burnish that, and that will make it dramatically less noticeable. Especially if you take the dining room table and turn it around. They don't even see it once you turn the table around. But no, they're like, when it comes to touch-up, now, somebody in one of the books that I read said, touch-up is the bane of every refinisher, and that's the truth. That's the hardest thing there is to do, is to touch up a finish. Back to the mountain range here. A satin finish is a mountain range, okay? And that's the reason it looks satiny. So, has anybody ever rubbed a spot on a satin finish and all of a sudden you have a bright spot that doesn't match anything else, okay? So how do you fix that? You gotta rub the whole blasted thing, don't you? So in our shop, if we fix work on something like that, we wet sand the whole thing and reshoot the whole thing, because that's the only way you're going to get it to disappear. The more you rub, the bigger the spot gets. Oh my God. It's like the blob, it gets bigger and bigger.
When you wet sand, what kind of grit?
When you're wet sanding, I would not wet sand any finish with less than 800.
800?
Yes. And some people like to use soapy water. We prefer mineral spirits because to us it seems to cut better, and it's just like we don't like to put water on finishes. We just don't like to do that.
Yeah. What makes floor varnish UV resistant?
They add UV additives to it.
What is that? What do you know what they are?
I have no idea. I'm not a
I've been
chemist.
trying to find out for a long time.
But if you spar varnish a front door that gets afternoon sun in Georgia, how long is a spar varnish? I don't care what they put in it. Nothing's going to stand up to the sun.
6 months.
Nothing's going to stand up to the sun. Believe me, everything you see on the shelf is marketed towards people that have a limited knowledge of finishing, so they can give you products that are redundant and you don't know it. Okay, especially the oil-based. All your oil-based products are exactly the same thing. They're all the same thing. Just buy a small pint of varnish and thin it out to whatever. If you want to make a wash coat, whatever, just add mineral spirits to it. Wait a minute, somebody had sanding sealer question, right?
Yeah. Is that a good thing to use before you begin putting your...
Absolutely, absolutely. Sanding sealer is it's exactly what it is. It seals the wood and allows you to sand it smooth very easily. Usually, lacquer sanding sealers have stearates in them, which is soap, and that makes the finished sand very, very easy. Shellac sanding sealer, I think it's just a thin shellac, and that sands very easy too.
What's the difference between a sanding sealer and
lacquer top coats? Well, if you're using lacquer sanding sealer, the difference between the sealer and the lacquer itself is the sealer has stearates in it, and the lacquer doesn't. So, and the lacquer is much, much harder to sand because it gets much, much harder.
Is that Zenza spray? Is that a seal?
Yeah. You can use shellac. Anything shellac can be used as a sealer. Shellac's an excellent sealer. Also, in our experience, shellac imparts a beauty on wood like no other finish can. Shellac is the ultimate finish as far as we're concerned, as far as the beauty of the wood really showing through. I mean, when you look at this, this is very, very pretty and it's just great work and all that. If you put a French polished shellac finish on this, it'll look completely three-dimensional. You'll be able to see way down in the wood. That's where you get that beautiful shimmer. Okay? Now, everybody has seen that beautiful shimmer in wood, haven't you? Where it changes colors when you walk by it. The depth, the three-dimensional depth. The only way that can be achieved is by putting a finish on it that is built up, that has a surface over top of the wood itself that makes the light refract when it hits it. It curves the light so it makes the wood come alive. You can't put a penetrating finish on a piece of wood and get that effect.
Is that the ones that point
So that's the word chatoyance. That's what chatoyance is. That's exactly right.
How does the sanding sealer differ from the crystal lac that Butch was talking about?
That's grain filler.
Well, sanding sealer is exactly what it said. It gives you something to sand the wood very smooth with.
Right.
Okay, wood filler is something that you close the pores up with. You put it into the wood and it seals the pores and gives you a flat surface. Takes away the grain pattern, makes it flat. And also, and you can use colored fillers to make the grain pattern even more vivid.
You need both?
Do you need sanding sealer and grain filler? Well, the way we do it is we'll put a wash coat of sanding sealer on the wood first, and then we'll put the wood filler over top of that after it's dried, and then you can scrape it off, and then you sand it smooth. You're going to sand through the initial sealer, but what you're doing, your goal is to make the wood completely flat, and that's how we do it.
I use the sanding sealer so the sand won't migrate dark color into a light color. That's my main reason of
A dark color what?
Well, say you got an ebony and a yellow heart, and you're going to sand that. The yellow heart's going to turn black. Sanding sealer blocks that. I mean, you got to use a blowgun and keep it clean too.
Yeah.
But the sanding sealer helps.
I see. Okay.
Keeps it from bleeding.
Keeps them bleeding.
Problem with walnut and maple, if like you're making a checkerboard, and you start sanding that, once you got it made, you're getting the walnut dust or particles will get down into that maple and turn your maple a little dark.
Right, and you need to fine sand a little bit finer. Now sanding is something else too. You can sand a piece of wood too smooth that a finish won't stick to it. You can.
Does it vary by wood?
Yes, it does. The harder the wood, the smoother you can get it. And so, like maple, we will sand maple up to about, what we'll do is we'll sand it with 220, like a rock maple top, sand it with 220, and then we'll wet it with water and let it dry, and that'll raise up whatever's left, and we sand that with 320, and that eliminates any scratches that we put in with 220. That's, you can really work yourself to death trying to get scratches out of wood, but water's the easiest way to get scratches out of wood. Like you can iron, like a lot of times if we have a really nice, like see this top right here is this, it's doing this. You can feel the waves in it. Now if we have to grind this smooth, we would use air sanders, and probably, we have this reciprocating sander that does this, and it gets things incredibly smooth. After we sanded it twice, probably with 220, then we would wet it real good. I'm talking about soaking wet. Then let it dry for a couple of days and come back and sand with 320. You get it real smooth that way, it'll look just like this, ready for finishing. Also, gluing things together. Your glue joints, you don't want your glue joints to be real smooth. When we repair chairs or repair anything, does everybody know what a wood rasp is? Yes. That's the way we clean glues off with wood rasps. So when we're done cleaning it off, that wood rasp has put scratches in the wood. And that's what makes for a nice tight joint. But you can really starve a joint real easy by squeezing it too tight. What we do is like we're gluing together a chair, you got the side stiles and all that, your legs. We'll clamp it up. When we see the glue squeezing out, that's where we stop. Once we see it squeezing, that's where we stop. Because the glue joint is going to be stronger than the wood itself. So when you starve the joint, and that's what we see most of the time, is when somebody brings in a chair that's falling apart, it's because it's been starved of glue. Also, how many people use hide glue in here? You do? Okay. Anybody else? You woodworkers, that's one thing that I strongly advise that you explore is hide glue. The stuff that you can buy off the shelf that stays liquid all the time, that actually has urine in it, uric acid. That's what extends the life of it, and that's why hide glue smells so incredibly bad. But that takes about 48 to 3 or 4 days for that stuff to really dry hard if it's fresh, okay? But if you make your own hide glue and you get used to using hide glue, once you've explored the possibilities of hide glue, you'll never use anything else. Because hide glue is the woodworker's glue. It glues things together. If it doesn't have to be waterproof, it glues things together better than anything else on the market, better than epoxies, anything. Also, how many of y'all have done a finishing project and you put your stain on and there's this big white streak from a glue spot? Hide glue will take color, so it disappears.
Are you talking about cooking it, or?
Yeah, the cooking, the type you make. If you, I mean, you use high glue, right?
That's another thing for my wife to smell.
But still, for making like, when you're building things like building pieces of furniture, something like that, high glue is the thing to use because not only will it take color if you miss a spot on a piece of wood, if you want to get something apart, you just start flooding it with vinegar and it just comes right apart. I've taken guitars completely apart in 20 minutes with hot vinegar. Right apart. And if you take something apart that's been high glued together, you can just take hot high glue, put it back on there. You don't have to scrape it or nothing because that'll remelt the existing glue and you put it right back together. It's all the same thing again.
What's Gorilla Glue?
Huh?
Gorilla Glue.
Gorilla Glue is a polyurethane type stuff that I just fixed the pedestal yesterday that had Gorilla Glue on it. Gorilla Glue is just another way to market something to you that doesn't do what you want it to do.
Yeah. Fine woodworking did a test of different glues. Gorilla Glue failed.
That did, works, yes.
Did you buy high glue at Home Depot or here? Or?
I don't know if they sell it here, but I'm not, is this the previous Stone Mountain tool store?
No.
That's still in existence, okay. Because the last time I talked to you guys, it was down there, I think. Well, Highland Woodworking sells anything you want. They have everything you want, yeah. And you can get it online, whatever. But high glue, once you get used to using it, you'll go, well, how come I haven't been using this forever? Because it's so versatile. Like when you're gluing something together, if you're using yellow glue, you put glue in there and you squeeze it with clamps and all this kind of stuff. If you use the right type of high glue, you put the glue in, you're done.
No, but what's the shelf life on that?
Huh?
What's the shelf life?
Indefinite. Thousands of years.
And if you make it, it's good.
All you got to do is, no. Once you make it, you mix it up. High glue is organic, right? So what happens to anything that's organic? It starts rotting and smelling bad. I mean, I have smelled pots that, God. Oh, man. But so when it starts to smell rancid, since it's so cheap and it goes such a long ways, you just throw it away. If you make fresh glue and you're done with the project, you can drink that too. It don't taste well. Add sugar to it.
What were you talking about, getting some run over on your glue and then being able to stain it the color?
Okay, high glue. High glue is organic, okay? So if you're using an alcohol stain or water-based stain, whatever, if you scrape and smooth everything, but there's still some glue embedded in the grain that you didn't know was there, you can't see it, you put stain on it, that'll turn, you won't take color, right? But if you're using high glue, it takes color and disappears. That's why it's the workhorse of the furniture, instrument, everything industry.
Collagen.
Yes.
It's made from polymer that our bodies and other
animals
produce. It's called collagen. Most of it's actually not made from hide, it's made from hooves.
That's why the Elmer is blue on cow.
Yeah. Well, see now, and then there's different types of organic glues too, like there's fish glue. Okay, fish glue is used basically for gold lettering on glass and all that because it's extremely clear. So real good glue. The Egyptians figured out how to gold leaf with fish glue, using fish glues. If I know my history right, I think. But like he said, collagen, horse hooves, our fingernails is what hide glue is. Jell-O is a good hide glue because that's all it is what the collagen. All right. Now, in gold leafing, what I like to do a lot is gold leafing, and in that process, we use rabbit skin glue, which is our real skin glue, and we use that for the properties that it has. It reactivates real quick and all this kind of stuff. So to do gold leafing, that's the way it's always been done. Unless you're doing some other type of leafing, you use fish glue, but high glue is the key to gold leafing. Unless you're doing oil glazing, which is, there's just a billion things here. Go ahead.
Talk more about the high glue. First of all, where would I get it? Secondly, what do I do? Does it come in a powder or a liquid or a paste or what?
I buy it from, I think I last bought it from Lee Valley.
Yeah.
And I bought the pot from them too.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a little double boiler. I mean, you use a crock pot.
Crock pot. We buy these little bitty crock pots or electric, what are those things you use forks with? Fondue. Those electric fondue pots, they're excellent. You put water in there as your double boiler right there. It's perfect. You can buy high glue from Holland Woodworking. You can buy high glue online, and it comes in different grades, different granule, different weights, and all this kind of stuff. But the way we do it, I just take it and put it into a blender, like a coffee grinder, and grind it up into a real fine dust, and add hot water to it. You got high glue instantly, just instantly. And you keep it hot when you're using it. And you can let it get cool in the pot, come back the next day and add a little bit of water to it and heat it up again, and it's still good. As long as it doesn't smell bad, it's still good.
Well, it kind of smells bad even.
It does kind of smell bad, and it's kind of hard to drink when you fix it and all that kind of stuff, because it does smell kind of bad.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Okay,
How about two more questions?
okay, two more questions.
Shellac, and then I put a spray lacquer over it, and I was trying to sand the bottom to get where I had it on the nail heads, and the lacquer's coming off, it's flaking off. It was a de-wax shellac, and I used naphtha, I believe, just to wipe or something. I used something besides alcohol to wipe it off, just as a double insurance.
Before you shot your lacquer on top?
Lacquer.
Is that it right there?
Yeah.
Let me see it. What was your question?
My question was, you were saying that you was, when you was sanding, not sanding, but polishing with metal spirit to
So I just
sand,
started sanding
once you finish, what are you wiping it off with? Wiping your metal spirit and stuff off with?
I didn't hear the first part of your question.
You were saying you're using metal spirit when you're sanding.
Wet sanding.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you get through with your wet sanding with that, what are you wiping the excess off with?
Just a clean rag.
And then you go ahead and spray.
Yeah. Now, when you're using shellacs, okay, if you sand something and you have a little bit of shellac dust left on it, if you put shellac over top of it, then that shellac's going to remelt that dust and it becomes part of the finish again. Lacquer's the same way. You can sand a lacquer finish and just kind of blow it off. You're going to see some dust on it, it'll make a difference. You spray another coat on, that dust is going to melt right into the finish. It just disappears. It melts into the finish. And see, that's the beauty of using, that's why shellacs and lacquers have been used in the furniture industry for all these years, is because they dry real fast and they're totally reversible with their own thinners. If you put a varnish over top of this right here and let it dry for a couple of days, and what thins varnish? Mineral spirits. That's oil, right? Mineral spirits. So mineral spirits thins varnish. If you put varnish on this and put mineral spirits over top of it, what would it do to it? Nothing. Clean it. Just clean it, right? So in other words, a varnish finish, an oil-based finish, is non-reversible, right? That means when those crosslinks happen, you can't reverse the crosslink. It's going to go in one direction and that's it. Lacquers and shellacs, on the other hand, will remelt just like fingernail polish. Just think of lacquers and shellacs as fingernail polish. Every layer you put on, the next layer melts right into it, so it becomes one homogeneous layer. Okay?
If you happen to be brushing a lacquer on, you have to be real careful because you'll soften. If you're trying to build up lacquer, you'll actually take the coat off that you put on.
Exactly. That's why we spray it on. We never touch the piece. We spray it on. We spray on shellacs too, then polish it. Somebody asked something about catalyzed finishes real quick. What was it?
Just in general, could you comment on the catalyzed finishes?
Okay.
Their durability and the difficulties of
using them? Okay. Catalyzed lacquers work just like regular lacquers. They just have a catalyst in it that makes it cure faster. Okay, that's the only difference between regular nitrocellulose and catalyzed lacquers. It has a catalyst that makes it cure faster. That's all it is. Okay.
Not harder or more durable?
No, just cure faster. Now, most catalyzed lacquers have additives to them to make them more durable than regular nitrocellulose lacquers. Okay, and the moisture resistance is better because of the additives and all that. That's why they developed catalyzed finishes for kitchen cabinets. Okay. Now, catalyzed varnishes is what you see on industrial equipment. You see it on really high-end desks. It's extremely durable finish. Like when you go into a restaurant, you see all the tables that have these beautiful finishes on. Those are catalyzed varnish finishes. And those are extremely durable. You can dance on them. You can't hurt them. But what they do is over a period of time, they'll crack. They start cracking because the varnish is constantly cross-linking and it's shrinking, so it starts to crack over a period of time. It takes a long time, but it does. And also, when it comes to varnish finishes, or any finishing material for that matter, remember the movement of the wood. The more finish you put on something, the faster it's going to fail. Does that make sense? The faster it's going to fail. The thicker your finish, the faster it's going to fail. Because of the malleability of the finish. 2 coats of polyurethane is just as good as 10 coats.
What is a coat?
Say that again?
What is a coat? I mean, 6
Okay.
times a coat or 1 time a coat?
Well, if I was doing something like this, I would take a roll and just roll it on, then tip it off, brush it off like that. And that way you get a nice even coat. When you dip your brush in the can, thick, thinner, thinner, right? That means this stroke is thinner than this stroke right here. But when you use a roller, you get a nice even coat. Just tip it off.
Well, you got to put a thick enough coat to sand the facets or the orange peel out of it. So you have to have it thick enough to do.
Why do you get an orange peel if you're brushing on coats?
Varnishes level.
Well, spray.
Spraying. You're spraying on varnishes?
Lacquer.
Lacquer. If you get an orange peel, then you're either holding it too close or you got contamination problems. Okay? All you guys need to take my 2-day finishing class. You'll learn a whole lot. Has anybody ever taken a class from me?
Yeah, how much do you charge for your 2-day?
2 days, $275. What a deal! What a deal! You wouldn't believe what you'd learn.
Do it here?
Oh, in my shop.
In your shop?
My shop. I have everything you can look at and see. I not only restore a piece, but I do all kinds of things to it. So you can see that you can do all kinds of things to something if you know what you're doing.
Where's your shop, Al?
It's on Peachtree Industrial Boulevard, right in Chamblee. If you're familiar with the Claremont Road Bridge, I'm back behind the bridge down there. It's not very far from here at all. What you have right here, you just have a wet sand that's smooth. That's all.
The bottom where it seems to be flaking off.
I don't see any flaking off. All I see is just the finish that needs to be smoothed. And if you had taken my French polish class, this would be beautiful. All kidding aside, if I could say for you guys to take a class from me, it would be one or the other. It would be coloring wood, because I can teach you something real quick to really, really dramatically help you with your coloring, and French polishing, which will show you how you can manipulate a finish real fast, how you can do something with a finish real quick. Those are the 2 classes, and those are only 3-hour classes that I do them in Holland Woodworking. And I'm going to start doing them on Saturday so people can get there. But French polishing class would be, and that's shellac, it's using shellacs. You can also polish with lacquers too. But the coloring wood thing is, I'm just going to tell you that there's only 2 colors that you have to worry about when you're coloring wood. And you have to come to my class to find out what they are.
At the beginning of your class, you mentioned a group of professionals. Is there an online forum for that group?
Well, the group that I'm in, of professionals, they won't allow, it's only professionals. But there's plenty of woodwork. You just Google woodworking blogs, and there's 100 of them. And I would say Woodshop News, their blog is a real good one. Jeff Jewett has a pretty good one. You can just type in any question, and you'll see many sites of woodworking blogs. Anything else, real quick?
You got a business card here?
Yes, I have one here. Anything else?
About water-based lacquers and conversion varnishes versus the lacquer-based.
Okay, we don't use water-based products because they dry too slow, and too many layers, they start to look like a milk can. They look milky. They haven't come up, in other words, nothing that we work on has water-based finishes on it, so we don't even bother with them. I know that they're really furiously working on the chemistry of that, but I think that's a long ways down the road for them to perfect a water-based finish. Basically, this is a good point. If you went and bought Minwax water-based polyurethane, aquaphane, whatever they call it, all you're buying basically is acrylic medium. You can go to Arts of Plastic and buy a tub of acrylic medium. All it is like a jelly, and you add water to it, and you brush it on something. That's the same thing as brushed on polyurethane, because all of this is an acrylic medium, okay? And acrylics are extremely water resistant. Like an acrylic painting versus an oil painting, an acrylic painting is not going to lose its luster or depth of clarity and all that for 500 years because of the nature of the acrylic polymers. But an oil painting gets duller and duller and duller and duller because of the cross-linking and also the over varnishes. So water-based finishes are basically acrylic mediums, and that's all they are. Now, we use water-based finishing materials like Liquitex water-based paints. We use those for touching up or whatever. But we don't use very many water-based products at all, except for water-based stains.
Kind of brings up another point. If you're using lacquer-based lacquers, they tend to yellow.
Unless you use cab lacquer. If you use cab lacquer, those are crystal clear. So the world of finishing is vast. That's why I didn't bring anything in here today and attempt to show you how to do something, because all I would do was confuse you, because everything I would show you, well, that leads to another question. Yeah, you just, and like I said before, you guys, you build a Rolls Royce, but you paint it with a paintbrush. So finishing is like, that is the more you know about it, the better the projects you're going to build and the better luck you're going to get. And also, the more things you can fix if you fudge something. Because if you're a good finisher, I mean, we take the finishes off of things and we're stunned at how much Bondo is in it. And whoever touched it up and made the Bondo disappear, they were excellent touch-up artists, So I mean, we get surprised all the time about how good the finishers before us, how good they were of hiding things, So see, like it's gotten so generic in manufacturing processes that it's rare that you walk into a furniture store nowadays and see a polished dining room table. All you see is this satin stuff, because they're using wood and wood products, which is wood and paper. And they want to make that wood and paper look as good as possible, so they'll put a fat satin finish on it and give you that coffee brown color so you can't even see the wood. So the furniture industry has really dumbed down the American public to buy this type of stuff. They can manufacture it super cheap and sell it for super high prices. Most of it comes from Indonesia anyway.
Furniture today made better or worse than it was?
Dramatically worse. Dramatically worse. It really went downhill in the early 70s. That's where it really started going.
You go to this rooms to go or rooms.
It's just junk.
I mean, it's made out of.
It's junk.
Wood sometimes.
It's junk.
It's just going to fall apart.
You can even smell it.
It's paper. It's paper. Also, like in upholstered furniture is the same way. When you go to rooms to go and buy a sofa, you're not going to have a frame that can be reupholstered. You got a piece of furniture that's disposable, and that's all it is. You're wasting your money. I mean, it'll cost you more to reupholster it than it would be to go buy another sofa when it comes to.
Probably built faster, but lesser.
It's built out of scrap pieces of plywood they staple together to make the frame. It's just unbelievable, unbelievable. They were making upholstered chairs, regular dining room chairs, out of plywood. The legs will just snap right off of them. Believe me, there's so much crap on the market today. It's so bad. Anything else? Anything else at all? Y'all give me a hand. Thank you very much.